Corruption isn't just a thing of the past, it's thriving in some corners of Europe. From embezzled public funds to shady political dealings, some countries are drowning in scandal while the public pays the price. And according to Transparency International's 2025 Corruption Perceptions Index, certain European nations are topping the charts for all the wrong reasons. Today on Globe Discoveries, we're diving into the 10 most corrupt countries in Europe in 2025. You might be shocked to see which nations made the list and how deep the corruption goes. Buckle up, because some of these stories are wilder than fiction. And before we get started, don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on more engaging content. Number 10. Greece. Greece has long battled corruption, and 2025 shows little improvement in this ongoing struggle. Despite reforms, issues like tax evasion, bribery, and nepotism continue to plague the nation. Transparency International's Corruption Perceptions Index (CPI) ranks Greece poorly, with a score of 49 out of 100, well below the European average. One of the biggest challenges remains bureaucratic inefficiency, which creates opportunities for bribery at multiple levels. Citizens frequently report having to pay under-the-table fees for basic services, such as healthcare and permits. The justice system also faces criticism for its slow pace in prosecuting high-profile corruption cases. Greece's economic struggles exacerbate the problem, as austerity measures have reduced oversight in key sectors. Public discontent remains high, with many citizens blaming corruption for the country's prolonged economic woes. While efforts to combat the issue exist, progress has been slow, and trust in public institutions remains low. Tourism, which accounts for 25% of Greece's GDP, has been relatively untouched by corruption scandals, but other industries have not been so lucky. Fraudulent practices in construction and energy contracts continue to make headlines, further tarnishing Greece's image. Without systemic reforms and stronger enforcement, Greece's fight against corruption will remain an uphill battle. Number 9. Italy. Italy continues to grapple with corruption in 2025, with issues deeply rooted in its political and economic systems. Ranked 41 on the CPI, the country has a long history of scandals involving public officials, organized crime, and corporate bribery. Despite efforts to address the issue, corruption remains a significant barrier to progress. One of Italy's most persistent problems is the influence of organized crime groups like the mafia, which infiltrate everything from local governments to major industries. These groups manipulate public contracts and siphon off billions of euros annually, undermining legitimate businesses and public trust. Political corruption also makes headlines frequently, with high-profile cases involving embezzlement and abuse of power. Transparency is improving in some regions, but southern Italy, in particular, struggles with accountability and enforcement. Citizens often face challenges accessing services without paying bribes or navigating bureaucratic obstacles. The economic cost of corruption is staggering, estimated to drain nearly 60 billion euros from the Italian economy each year. This impacts infrastructure, education, and healthcare, leaving many Italians frustrated with their government's inability to root out the problem. While Italy has made strides in anti-corruption legislation, the deeply ingrained nature of the issue makes meaningful change a slow process. Number 8. Bulgaria. Bulgaria has earned its reputation as one of the most corrupt countries in Europe. With a CPI score of 43 in 2024, the country faces widespread issues, from bribery in public services to embezzlement of EU development funds. Corruption permeates many aspects of daily life, leaving citizens disillusioned with their leaders. One of Bulgaria's biggest challenges is the misuse of EU funds, which make up 4% of its GDP. Allegations of fraudulent spending and cronyism frequently emerge, damaging the country's relationship with the European Union. Public procurement processes are often rigged, with contracts awarded to politically connected individuals or companies. The judiciary system is another weak point, with delays in prosecuting corruption cases and allegations of political interference. This lack of accountability has created a culture where corruption thrives, as many officials feel they can act with impunity. Healthcare and education sectors are particularly affected, with citizens reporting frequent demands for bribes to access basic services. This further erodes public trust and exacerbates inequalities within the country. Despite pressure from the EU to address these issues, progress has been slow, and Bulgaria remains a cautionary tale of how corruption can hinder development. Number 7. Romania. Romania continues to struggle with corruption in 2025, earning a CPI score of 45. While some progress has been made, systemic issues persist, particularly in public administration and law enforcement. High-profile scandals involving embezzlement and abuse of power dominate headlines, showcasing the country's ongoing challenges. Public procurement and infrastructure projects are hotbeds for corruption, with inflated costs and contracts often awarded to politically connected firms. These practices not only waste public funds, but also slow down critical developments in transportation and utilities. Romania's justice system has seen both progress and setbacks. While the National Anti-Corruption Directorate DNA has successfully prosecuted many officials, political interference remains a significant problem. This undermines public confidence in the rule of law and discourages whistleblowers from coming forward. Healthcare is another sector heavily impacted by corruption, with bribes often required for timely medical treatment. Education is similarly affected, with instances of nepotism and bribery in academic institutions. These issues perpetuate inequality and hinder Romania's ability to improve living standards. While Romania's economy is growing, corruption continues to undermine its potential, making meaningful reform essential for a brighter future. Number 6. Serbia. Serbia ranks poorly on the CPI, with a score of 38, reflecting its ongoing battle with corruption. The country faces significant challenges in government transparency, judicial independence, and public procurement processes. Despite promises of reform, progress has been slow, leaving citizens frustrated with the lack of accountability. Public administration is riddled with nepotism, with key positions often filled based on political connections rather than merit. This creates inefficiencies and stifles innovation, hindering Serbia's development. Public contracts are another major issue, with allegations of favoritism and inflated costs frequently emerging. The judiciary is not immune to corruption, with cases of bribery and political interference undermining its credibility. This lack of trust in the legal system discourages businesses and investors, further slowing economic growth. Serbia's media landscape also faces challenges, with accusations of government influence and suppression of critical voices. This limits public awareness of corruption issues and stifles calls for change. While Serbia aspires to join the European Union, tackling its corruption problem will be a critical hurdle in achieving this goal. Number 5. Albania. Albania remains one of Europe's most corrupt countries in 2025, with a CPI score of 36, reflecting its deep-rooted issues. Corruption permeates many aspects of public life, from government procurement to law enforcement, creating widespread frustration among citizens. Despite its aspirations to join the European Union, Albania's progress is hindered by a lack of transparency and accountability. Public contracts are frequently awarded through opaque processes, with allegations of favoritism and kickbacks undermining fair competition. These corrupt practices have cost the country millions of euros, stalling vital infrastructure projects and discouraging foreign investment. In rural areas, access to public services often depends on bribes, leaving many residents feeling disenfranchised. The judiciary in Albania is particularly problematic, with frequent reports of bribery and political interference. Efforts to reform the system have been slow, further eroding trust in the rule of law. Political instability and scandals involving high-ranking officials continue to dominate headlines, adding to the public's dissatisfaction. Albania's economy relies heavily on tourism and remittances, but corruption in these sectors has led to mismanagement and lost opportunities. Tax evasion is another persistent issue, with many businesses operating in the informal economy to avoid burdensome and corrupt bureaucratic systems. While international pressure has pushed for reforms, Albania's fight against corruption remains an uphill battle, with significant changes needed to rebuild trust and drive progress. Number 4. Montenegro. Montenegro's small size has not shielded it from large-scale corruption. With a CPI score of 38 in 2024, political favoritism, cronyism, and money laundering remain widespread, particularly in key sectors like construction and energy. The country's public administration often acts in the interest of powerful elites, leaving ordinary citizens frustrated and excluded. Tourism, a vital part of Montenegro's economy, has been marred by allegations of land misappropriation and dubious development projects. Public lands are frequently sold at below-market prices to politically connected individuals, depriving the state of significant revenue. This has led to growing discontent, especially among younger generations. The judiciary's lack of independence further compounds the issue, with slow and ineffective prosecutions of corruption cases. High-ranking officials often avoid accountability, creating a culture of impunity that undermines public trust. Media outlets that report on corruption frequently face harassment, limiting transparency and open discourse. Montenegro's reliance on foreign investment has also exposed vulnerabilities, as questionable deals and inflated contracts benefit a select few. The misuse of public funds and weak regulatory oversight have hindered economic growth and exacerbated inequality. Despite its picturesque landscapes and strategic location, Montenegro's persistent corruption poses a significant threat to its future stability and prosperity. Number 3. Bosnia and Herzegovina. Bosnia and Herzegovina faces systemic corruption in 2025, earning a CPI score of 34, one of the lowest in Europe. The country's complex political structure, which divides power among ethnic groups, has created fertile ground for nepotism and inefficiency. Public resources are often mismanaged, with funds disappearing into the hands of corrupt officials. Public procurement is a major area of concern, with contracts frequently awarded without competitive bidding. This has led to inflated costs and substandard infrastructure projects, further deepening public frustration. Citizens report frequent demands for bribes in healthcare, education, and other essential services. The judiciary system is severely compromised, with political interference hindering investigations and prosecutions of corruption cases. High-profile scandals often go unpunished, reinforcing the perception that powerful individuals are above the law. This lack of accountability has discouraged investment and stifled economic development. Bosnia's political instability exacerbates the issue, with ongoing tensions between ethnic groups diverting attention from necessary reforms. The misuse of international aid funds has also been a recurring problem, eroding trust between the country and its global partners. While Bosnia and Herzegovina has significant potential, systemic corruption continues to hold it back, leaving citizens disillusioned and progress stalled. Number 2. Russia. Russia's pervasive corruption remains one of its defining features in 2025, with a CPI score of 29, the lowest among European nations. The intertwining of political power and economic control has created a system where bribes and favoritism are standard practice. The lack of independent oversight allows corruption to thrive at all levels of government and industry. Large-scale embezzlement in state-owned enterprises is a frequent occurrence, with billions of rubles lost annually. Infrastructure projects, such as road construction and energy pipelines, are particularly vulnerable to fraud and cost overruns. This mismanagement has hindered Russia's economic development, despite its vast natural resources. The judicial system is highly politicized, with selective prosecutions often targeting political opponents rather than addressing genuine corruption. Law enforcement agencies are also implicated, with reports of bribery and abuse of power undermining public trust. Transparency International consistently ranks Russia as one of the most corrupt countries globally. Russia's oligarchic system further entrenches inequality, with a small elite controlling the majority of the nation's wealth. Public services, including healthcare and education, suffer from chronic underfunding and mismanagement, leaving ordinary citizens to bear the brunt of corruption. Despite its geopolitical influence, Russia's endemic corruption remains a major obstacle to achieving economic and social progress. Number 1. Belarus. Belarus tops the list as one of the most corrupt countries in Europe in 2025, with a CPI score of 27. The authoritarian regime under Alexander Lukashenko continues to suppress dissent while fostering a culture of corruption within state institutions. Bribery, cronyism, and misuse of public funds are rampant, with little accountability for those in power. The state-controlled economy is rife with inefficiencies, as government officials often award lucrative contracts to allies rather than competitive bidders. This has led to poorly executed projects and significant financial losses for the country. Citizens frequently report having to pay bribes to access basic services, from medical care to business permits. The judiciary is entirely under the regime's control, rendering it ineffective in combating corruption. High-profile scandals rarely result in convictions, reinforcing the perception that the law does not apply to those with political connections. Media censorship further limits transparency, making it difficult to expose corruption and hold officials accountable. Belarus's economic isolation, exacerbated by international sanctions, has further entrenched corrupt practices. Smuggling and illicit trade have become key sources of income for certain elites, deepening the divide between the government and ordinary citizens. With little hope for reform under the current leadership, corruption remains deeply embedded in Belarusian society, leaving its citizens increasingly disillusioned. Here are some practical tips to consider before moving to these countries. Research corruption levels. Read Transparency International reports and local news to gauge how corruption might affect daily life, such as dealing with bureaucracy or public services. Prepare for bureaucratic challenges. Be ready to navigate complex systems, as inefficiency and bribery can delay processes like obtaining visas, permits, or utilities. Budget for unexpected costs. In countries with high corruption, you may face unofficial fees for public services or permits. Secure health insurance. Public healthcare systems in corrupt countries can be underfunded or require bribes for faster service. Learn the local language and customs. Being fluent in the local language and understanding cultural norms can help you navigate corruption-related challenges. Corruption continues to undermine trust, progress, and stability in these 10 European countries. From embezzlement to political favoritism, the consequences of corruption affect every aspect of daily life. Which of these countries surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and explore our channel for more insights into global trends. Thank you for watching, and stay informed.